Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into the cold, damp shadows of the medieval countryside. Not as royalty, not even as the poor men tilling the fields, but as the women who were born into a world that expected them to suffer quietly and vanish without complaint. The night is still. The thatch roof above you leaks slightly from last week's rain, and the smell of damp straw smoke and soil is all around you. The baby beside you whimpers from hunger, and your fingers are raw from scrubbing clothes at the river earlier that day. You're 13 years old, and you're already someone's wife. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world outside is dark, but not just because it's night. You wake before the first cock crow, the sky still ink black, your bones aching, though you've barely moved. There's no mattress, just a pile of moldy straw on wooden planks. The blankets are a mix of old rags and whatever fur your husband hasn't sold at market. You pull yourself up, careful not to wake the baby, and reach for the kerosene lamp. Know that wouldn't exist for another 500 years. You strike flint to light the taper. Smoke curls upward, mixing with the smell of last night's stew if you were lucky enough to have some. You are a peasant woman in the Middle Ages. You don't know what century it is. No one around you can read or write. You've never seen a map. You don't even know what the world looks like beyond the fields that border your village. The church bells are the only clock that matters, and today, like yesterday and tomorrow, will be a race against hunger. You wrap a coarse wool shawl over your shoulders and open the crooked door. The morning air cuts through you, cold, damp, biting. The thatch above you does little to keep out the weather. Your hands cracked and red reach for the wooden bucket. You need water. The well is nearly a quarter-mile away, and your knees already feel like they belong to someone thrice your age. Every woman in your village wakes the same way. The men have their burdens, yes, but yours are quieter, heavier, and often invisible. You must prepare food before you've eaten. You must fetch water before you've drunk. You must feed everyone else before you're allowed to stop. And when you do stop, it's not to rest. It's to sow, to scrub, to birth, or to bury. The smell of the barn greets you as you pass. A goat bleats weakly. The pig, your family's greatest treasure, snorts as it stirs in the straw. You hope it doesn't sicken. It's all that stands between you and a winter without salt meat. The chickens squawk, and you gather the few eggs they've laid. You pocket 2 for your husband. He'll need strength for the fields. You may eat what's left, if anything. Back inside, your mother-in-law mutters prayers as she stokes the fire. She's missing most of her teeth and hasn't left the house in weeks. Some say it's a wasting sickness. Others say the devil's taken her. You say nothing. You've learned not to speak unless asked. Not because you're afraid, though you are, but because no one listens. Your first child came last winter. You thought she might not survive. For a while she didn't move, didn't cry. Then one night she screamed and you wept from relief. You'd never known love like that. But love doesn't protect. The midwife said she might last a year. Most don't. You don't think about it now, but her skin has turned paler this week. You noticed. You always notice. By mid-morning, the men have gone to the fields. You head to the river laundry piled high in a wicker basket strapped to your back. Your shoulders are raw before you even reach the bank. The water is freezing. You kneel numb to the stones cutting into your shins. The linen is stiff with old sweat and newer blood. You scrub anyway. You always scrub. Beside you, another woman sighs. She's older, maybe 25. Her fifth child was born dead last spring. She never talks about it. You don't ask. Instead, you hum together old hymns passed down by breath and memory, the only music you'll ever know. When you return, the baby is crying. You feed her from a breast that aches not because of milk, but because it's been infected for days. You fear it might kill you. But what else can you do? There's no doctor, just a priest, and he says to pray. You've prayed. You've prayed so much it feels like your knees have grown calluses on your soul. In the afternoon, you weave. Cloth rope reeds whatever's needed. It's not a hobby. It's survival. One extra spindle of thread might mean you can trade for salt or oil or dried apples. Your fingers bleed. You wrap them in rags and keep going. Evening comes. You prepare pottage, a thin stew of beans and barley boiled until it's nearly tasteless. A single onion gives it flavor. You save the meat, if any, for Sunday. Tonight the children will eat first. If there's anything left, you'll take your share. If not, you'll sleep hungry again. It's normal. Your husband returns. He's silent, tired. Dirt cakes his skin. He doesn't thank you for the food. That would be strange. Gratitude is not expected. Your work is invisible unless it's done wrong. Then it's punished. You lay beside him in silence. The fire has dimmed. The baby coughs. You wonder if she'll still be breathing in the morning. You press your hand to her chest to be sure. She's warm. Still here. Tomorrow will be the same. And that's how it begins. Life for a medieval peasant woman is not marked by dramatic events, but by the slow erosion of self through relentless routine. There is no you here, only what you must do, what you must endure, what you must become. But you aren't done yet. There are thousands of steps left to take, through feast and famine, childbirth and church feasts, fields and funerals. So close your eyes now. You're still breathing. You've made it through one day. Tomorrow will ask everything of you again, and you'll give it without being asked. The rooster crows, but you're already awake. You haven't truly slept. The fire died hours ago, and the cold crept into your bones like a second skin. You shiver beneath the rough wool, but moving means waking the baby, and the baby means crying, and crying means your husband might stir and curse. So you lie still, listening to the sounds of the waking village. A dog barks. Someone yells about a missing sheep. The old bell at the church tower groans as it prepares to toll the morning hour. That's your signal. You rise, bones stiff back, screaming from the day before. Your feet are numb against the dirt floor. You don't have shoes, just scraps of fabric you've tied together, barely holding. They'll get soaked at the well anyway, so why bother? You light a small flame and glance at the wooden cross carved into the wall. You whisper a prayer, not out of hope, but out of habit. Today is washing day again. You washed yesterday too, but it never ends. Your husband's tunic reeks of sweat and dung. He doesn't care. But you do. You're the one who'll get scolded by the reeve if your household's linens are dirty during inspection, not him. You pack the basket once more and balance it on your hip. Outside, the sky is gray and heavy. It might rain. It usually does. The path to the river is already thick with mud, and your foot slips, nearly twisting your ankle. You don't cry out. You just grit your teeth and move forward. Falling isn't an option. If you fall and twist something, there's no one to help. No one to take your place. There is no backup, only you. At the river, the same women are already there. Agnes, with her sunken eyes and quiet voice, hums while she scrubs. Margaret, older and sharp-tongued, mutters curses about her husband's drinking. You don't say much, just nod. You all know the same rhythm, the same pain. Words are unnecessary. This is your community. Not warm or safe, but consistent. You think back to the first time you came here. You were barely 10, helping your mother, who was already pregnant with her 6th. She had no energy left. You remember the blood from her coughing. She was gone before you turned 12. No one said the word tuberculosis. They just said God called her home. You weren't angry then. You aren't angry now. You don't know what anger looks like when there's no one to direct it toward. You finish your washing, fingers numb and raw. As you trudge back home, your mind drifts to the church feast coming up. St. Bridget's Day. There might be bread with honey. That happened once when the baker's wife miscarried and offered sweets as a votive gift. You wonder what she traded for the honey. Maybe a piglet. Maybe her only piece of jewelry. Back home, your toddler runs to you, bare feet slapping the ground. She's covered in mud and holding something in her hands. A worm. You don't have the energy to scold her. Instead, you kneel and brush her hair back from her face. She laughs. And for a moment, the mud, the hunger, the pain, it all fades. Just for a second. You prepare a small meal. Boiled oats, no salt. A few scraps of greens. You crush dried nettles for flavor, though the children always wrinkle their noses. Still, they eat. They always eat. You portion the food carefully, making sure everyone has something. You take the smallest bit for yourself. Your stomach protests. It growls, but you ignore it. Your neighbor Edith comes by. Her baby is sick, burning with fever. She asks if you've seen the midwife. You shake your head. The midwife hasn't been seen for days. Rumor says she was summoned to the Lord's manor where his wife is in labor. Edith's baby is barely breathing. You offer her the last of your willow bark tea. She hesitates, knowing it's all you have. You press it into her hands anyway. The afternoon is spent spinning wool. You sit on a stool that wobbles, hands working rhythmically, mind drifting. You remember stories your grandmother told, tales of saints and demons, of women who were burned for speaking to the moon, of men who disappeared in the woods and returned changed. You used to believe them. Now they just feel like dreams someone else had. Your child coughs, a dry hacking sound. You know that cough. Every woman in the village knows that cough. You wrap her in the warmest shawl you own, the one your mother spun before she died. You rock her gently and sing the old lullaby. The words are in a tongue no one remembers, but the melody remains. You hum it until your own eyes grow heavy. By evening, the men return. You rise to prepare supper again, thin pottage. You try to make it taste different by stirring longer, by adding herbs you found by the hedge. It doesn't matter. They eat in silence, and you clean the bowls in silence. Your husband grunts something about the miller shorting him on grain. You nod. You don't ask questions. If he's in a foul mood, it's better not to speak. Later, he takes you to bed. There are no candles, no warmth. It is not romance. It is duty. You close your eyes and pray it ends quickly. It does. You lie awake for a while afterwards, staring at the shadows on the wall. You wonder if you'll get pregnant again. You don't want to. You're not ready. But readiness doesn't matter. You think of the woman who died last spring in childbirth. They said the baby was sideways. The midwife tried to turn it, but there was too much blood. No one said her name after that. Her husband remarried within the month. The new wife is 15. She barely speaks. You saw the bruises on her arms. Your daughter stirs in her sleep. You roll over and pull her close. Her breathing is shallow but steady. You press your forehead to hers and try to fall asleep. You dream of fire, of warmth, of bread thick with honey. You dream of your mother's voice calling you in from the fields. You dream of nothing. The rooster will call again soon. You will rise. You will work. You will endure. And no one will call it remarkable. But it is. Every step, every moment you survive is a triumph written in silence. You are history's ghost, forgotten but never gone. You are the heartbeat beneath the kingdom, and you are far from done. The church bells toll just before dawn, long before your body is ready. You pull the shawl tighter around you, but it does nothing against the damp. Your daughter has a fever now. She was burning up in the night. Her skin felt like hot wax. You pressed a damp rag to her head again and again, whispering prayers you barely remembered. But prayer isn't medicine. You know that. And still you pray. Your husband has already gone, leaving behind the smell of unwashed wool and sweat. He said nothing, just grabbed his sack of tools and walked out into the fog. You don't know where he goes, not exactly. Just to the fields, as always. The same as his father and his father before him. It's not your place to ask. Not your place to know. You check your daughter again. Her eyes are open now, glossy and distant. Her lips are dry, cracked. You can't afford to fetch the priest, not unless she's close to death. And even then, last rites are more ceremony than cure. The midwife might help if she returns in time. But time is always a cruel thing in your world. It never waits. It only slips away. You lift your girl in your arms, her small body too light. She should weigh more. You whisper softly, telling her stories about the sun and the saints, about the geese that will fly south soon, about the shoes you once had that clicked on the stones in the churchyard. She doesn't answer. She just breathes, slow and thin. You place her gently near the hearth and add another stick of kindling, even though you should be saving it. Heat means hope, and you'll trade everything for hope today. There's no breakfast to speak of. A crust of bread softened in water split between the children. You chew a dry piece yourself, swallowing against the lump in your throat. It tastes like dust. Still, it's more than some have. You remember days when there was nothing, when the sky refused to rain, and the fields shriveled, and people buried their own with empty stomachs. Outside, the village is already stirring. Smoke curls from crooked chimneys. A pig squeals. Someone is shouting about a stolen turnip again. You step into the muddy lane with your basket slung low, a bundle of mended clothing on your hip. You're headed to the manor house. The lady of the manor sent word down through her servant that she's in need of new threadwork. You're not the best seamstress, but you're careful, and that counts for something. Maybe she'll trade for milk or even coin, though you know better than to hope for silver. The manor looms above the village stones, black with age. You keep your eyes low as you approach. The servants scurry like mice along the edges. You're brought to the kitchen door where a sour-faced housemaid eyes your basket. You're ushered in, no greetings, just orders. The lady sits near the hearth, wrapped in furs, her skin pale and polished like ivory. She doesn't look at you at first. She just points at the embroidery hoop in her lap. She wants the hem repaired and the border restitched. Her voice is soft but not kind. You bow slightly and take the fabric gently. It's finer than anything you've touched in months. The thread alone is worth a week of food. She comments on your hands, how rough they are, how ugly. You don't reply. You simply keep your head down. She says peasant women should wear gloves if they're going to handle fine cloth. You bite your tongue. You'd wear gloves if you didn't need to trade eggs for shoes, if your daughter weren't burning to death in the corner of your hut, if your life weren't stitched together from threadbare chances and broken prayers. She gives you half a loaf of bread and a thin wedge of cheese as payment. It's more than you expected. You curtsy low, mumble your thanks, and retreat without making eye contact. Outside, the wind has picked up. Leaves blow in brittle spirals along the dirt road. You pull your shawl tighter and hurry home, the cheese hidden deep in your basket, protected like treasure. When you return, your daughter is curled by the fire, eyes closed. She stirs when you call her name, and her fingers twitch toward yours. You break a bit of the cheese into tiny pieces and place them on her tongue. She winces, swallows. She coughs again, but you see her eyelids flutter open just a little more than before. Maybe, just maybe, she'll make it through the night. You don't celebrate. Not yet. Survival is never certain. Only repetition is. And today isn't done. You take the damp clothes and hang them over the hearth, rotating them slowly so the smoke can draw out the moisture. They'll smell like fire, but they'll be dry. You prepare the embroidery hoop with the lady's dress and begin to stitch. It takes hours. Your eyes strain in the dim light. You can't afford to waste thread. Every movement must be perfect. As you sew, you listen to the village sounds, the sharp clack of axe on wood, the low murmur of prayer, the occasional outburst of laughter from someone's open window. You wonder what it's like to laugh without consequence. To giggle just because something was funny, not as a moment stolen between fear and responsibility. The shadows lengthen. The light fades. You finish the stitching just before dusk and wrap the dress in a square of linen. You'll return it tomorrow. You pray she doesn't find fault. One wrong stitch and she could claim you ruined it. She could have you banned from the manor, or worse. That evening you cook a thicker broth, adding the bread crusts and soaking the cheese rind to melt into the pot. It's the best thing you've eaten in weeks. Your husband doesn't comment, but he eats everything. Your daughter has a few spoonfuls and drifts into sleep with her cheek against your lap. You sit still for a long time watching the fire. Your arms ache, your feet are cracked, and your lower back burns with a tight, deep pain. You're not sure how long you've had that pain. Years, maybe. It never fully goes away. Like the cold, like the quiet sadness that floats in and never leaves. But tonight, your daughter sleeps with color in her cheeks. Tonight, you stitched fine silk and tasted real cheese. And tonight, for the first time in many nights, you think maybe, just maybe, you'll see spring again. But first, there is another night to survive, and another dawn to meet. And you, as always, will be there to meet it. Morning presses its weight against you before your eyes even open. You know the hour by the smell of the ashes, burnt-out wood, and damp stone from the hearth, and the way the cold settles into your chest like a warning. You rise carefully, limbs stiff and sore. The air is thick with silence. You check the small bundle of warmth beside you. Your daughter's skin is no longer burning. Her breath is shallow but steady. You press your lips to her forehead and close your eyes in silent thanks. There's no time to linger. The animals must be tended. The pig needs slop. The chickens will squawk until they're fed, and if you wait too long, they'll stop laying altogether. The cow, your family's miracle animal, must be milked before her udders swell. You rise and tie your apron thick with the stains of yesterday and the day before that. The ground outside is still wet from last night's drizzle, and your shoes squelch in the mud with each step toward the barn. You lift the heavy wooden latch and step inside. The barn smells of wet straw and manure, but to you it is the scent of stability. The cow lows gently when she sees you. You stroke her side before kneeling beside her, your hands already numb from the chill. The rhythm of milking is one of the few constants in your life. The sound of milk hitting the pail, the warmth of her flank, the sigh she gives when it's done, it's a quiet kind of prayer, one that steadies you in a world so often unkind. Back in the cottage, you strain the milk through cloth to catch bits of hay or dirt, then pour it into a clay vessel. You'll use it sparingly, mostly for the children. The rich families use milk for butter and cheese. You use it to stretch the porridge. Your husband is in a rare mood today. He talks as he eats, grumbling about the manor steward demanding more grain, complaining about blisters on his palms, muttering something about wolves spotted near the southern road. You nod, murmuring agreement when appropriate. He doesn't want answers, just someone to absorb the sound of his complaints. When he leaves, your shoulders relax slightly. You love him in the way that a stone loves the wind. He is constant, sometimes cold, sometimes painful, but familiar. You were betrothed before you bled the first time, married a year later. He was older, but not unkind. There were worse matches. You remind yourself of that often. Your chores today are endless. The lentils must be sorted. The flax must be spun. The herbs you dried last week need to be bundled and hung from the rafters. You do everything with one ear tuned toward your daughter's breathing. Every cough makes your heart lurch. Every silence makes you freeze. You've learned to live in this state, half work, half worry. The neighbor's boy runs by chasing a wooden hoop with a stick. He's laughing, kicking up mud with every step. For a moment you smile. Then you see the look in his mother's eyes as she watches him, tired, guarded, as if joy might break if held too tightly. You recognize that look. It's your own. Later in the morning, the tanner's wife stops by. She wants to barter. She has a scrap of leather that could be turned into new shoe soles if you have thread and a thimble to spare. You do just barely. You trade quickly, hands brushing over the goods like thieves in the marketplace. You don't speak much. Conversation is a luxury. You part with quiet nods. By midday, the sun filters weakly through the cloud cover. You gather what little vegetables you have and begin preparing the midday meal. You mash the turnips and add a pinch of dried garlic leaves. It's bland but filling. You eat with the children while your husband works. He won't return until dusk. That time between midday and evening is yours, sort of. You use it to patch his cloak worn thin at the elbows, to mend your son's woolen tunic, to clean the soot from the hearth and sweep the earthen floor. You don't stop. If you stop, things unravel. Not just the cloth, but the structure of everything. So you move through your tasks like a ghost present, but fading. When the church bells ring for vespers, you pause. Not because you're going to church. There's no time for that today, but because the sound reminds you you're still part of something larger. You may never leave this village. You may never see another town or speak to a priest who isn't half drunk, but the bells tie you to the rest of the world. Somewhere someone else hears them and pauses too. That thought, faint as it is, brings comfort. Your daughter wakes from her nap, her eyes brighter than yesterday. She asks for more broth. You give it to her and hold her close as she eats. She leans into you, small hands clutching your sleeve. She whispers that her dolly is cold. You wrap it in a scrap of linen and place it near the fire. You're not sure why that makes your throat tighten. You blink and look away. The boys return from gathering firewood. Their hands are scraped and their cheeks wind-burnt. They complain about the weight of the branches, but you see pride in their eyes. They are growing fast. Soon they'll be old enough to work the fields. You want to freeze time, keep them this small, this sweet. But time moves forward, and you are only ever trying to catch up. The evening meal is thin again. Barley and bits of carrot stewed to softness. You add a dash of milk to thicken it. Everyone eats in silence, save for the soft clink of wooden spoons against bowls. Afterward, your husband speaks a blessing short and tired, and retreats to the cot. The children curl up by the hearth limbs, tangled like puppies. You remain seated, mending a tear in your apron by firelight. Your mind drifts as the needle moves in and out of the fabric. You think of the old songs, those sung during planting season, the ones your mother used to hum. You think of your sister gone these 3 winters, now lost to the fever. You think of what might be if your daughter survives, if there's enough food next season, if the Lord forgets to raise taxes. The fire crackles, the baby stirs, your back aches, and still you work. Because this is life for a medieval peasant woman. A string of days knotted with hope, hardship, and silence. You're not celebrated, you're not seen, but without you, everything would collapse. You are the hidden spine of the world, and the night has just begun. The sky is barely light when you wake to the sound of a dog barking somewhere near the edge of the village. You sit up slowly, brushing straw from your hair. You dreamt of water, deep, clean, and endless. But now you're here, surrounded by smoke, mud, and the soft wheezing of your children sleeping nearby. The fire burned low in the night, and the embers glow dull and sullen in the hearth. You stir them with a stick and feed them a few twigs. Your careful wood is precious. It's your sons who gather it, after all, dragging fallen branches back from the forest, risking the reeve's wrath if they cross too far into the Lord's land. You stretch your arms and listen. One child coughs, another rolls over in sleep. The baby whimpers, then goes quiet again. It's early still, but you can't go back to sleep. Sleep never holds you long, it never did. Too many things to do. Too many voices in your head reminding you that nothing waits. You press your palm to your daughter's forehead again. She's not feverish anymore, not cold either. Her breathing is quiet. You allow yourself the faintest smile before gathering your shawl. Today you're due at the bakehouse. Each household takes turns at the communal oven scheduled by the church steward and tracked by chalk on the stone wall near the chapel. You rise, gather your kneaded dough wrapped in linen, and tuck it carefully into your basket. The dough is heavy, dense with rye and barley, mixed with crushed peas to stretch it. You couldn't afford wheat. No one you know can. Outside, the sky is misted with gray. The fields look like they're steaming, and the trees drip with the remnants of last night's fog. The path to the bakehouse winds past where a few women are already filling buckets. You nod to them. Agnes raises a hand in greeting. No one speaks loudly. It's too early for that. When you arrive, the bakehouse is warm and smells sweet, yeasty, earthy, familiar. The oven master, a man with hands like shovels, nods as he sees your bundle. You wait your turn while the others slide loaves into the heat. The oven is massive, dug deep into the earth, the stones blackened from years of smoke and flame. The ash has to be scraped before each baking, and you take your turn with the rake. Finally, your dough is ready to go in. You mark your loaf with a small cross. Everyone does, partly for blessing, partly for identification. You whisper a prayer, not because you believe it will rise better, but because you need something, anything to hold on to. You leave the loaf to bake and join the others outside, warming your hands over a small side fire. You talk about the harvest, how the rain has delayed it, how the Lord's steward is threatening increased levies, how Edith's husband still hasn't come back from the next village. No one says it out loud, but you all think the same thing: he probably won't. Someone says the Reeves' daughter is being courted by a merchant's son. There's a small silence. A merchant's son means escape, real coin, silk, maybe even shoes that fit. But none of you could ever dream of such a match. You were promised young, married younger. You've been worn down like river stones ever since. Back at home, your eldest is tending the little ones. He's only 10, but he knows how to heat broth and rock the baby. He learned fast. He had to. You smile at him when you return, pressing a kiss to the crown of his head. He smells like ashes and milk. You lift your baked loaf from the basket, still warm. The crust is cracked and golden brown, the smell heavenly. The children gather, close noses twitching. You break it carefully, half will be for supper. The other half is stretched through the day in tiny pieces. In the afternoon, you walk to the outer fields where wild herbs grow. You're careful to avoid the Lord's wheat rows. Trespassing brings punishment. You crouch among the weeds, picking what you can: sorrel, chickweed, wild garlic. You bundle them in cloth and hide them in your basket. These will go into the pottage tonight. They'll bring color to the pot and a little more taste to the children's mouths. On your way back, you pass the church. The priest stands near the door speaking with one of the bailiffs. He doesn't look at you. He rarely does. You think about stopping in to pray, but decide against it. The church is cold, and you've already spoken enough prayers in your head today. Back home, you crush dried nettles into a powder and mix them with a little grain to make a rough mash for the animals. You scrape the bottom of your flour sack and sigh. You'll need more by week's end. You may need to trade again. Maybe more thread work. Maybe your last good comb. Everything has a cost. That evening, you prepare the stew with what you found. It bubbles gently in the pot. The house smells green and bitter, but better than nothing. Your daughter eats 3 spoonfuls. You whisper a silent thank you. After the children sleep, you take your husband's boots in hand. They're falling apart again. You patch the sole with the scrap of leather you traded for earlier in the week. You poke the needle through, guiding it with your thimble hands steady, despite the dull ache in your wrists. The fire pops. The wind howls outside. You sew and listen. When you finish, you sit quietly, your hands folded in your lap. You glance around the room. It is small, smoky, worn. But tonight, no one is sick. No one is crying. And there is still half a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth for the morning. You stare at the fire, eyes heavy. You're so tired you don't even feel tired anymore. You are a machine that repairs itself every night, just enough to work again in the morning. And yet somehow you go on. The wind outside hisses against the doorframe like an old warning. You pull your shawl tighter. Tomorrow will come. It always does. And when it does, you'll be there, scrubbing, stitching, stirring, surviving. Because no one else will do it. And somehow, despite it all, you've made it through another day. The sound that wakes you today isn't the rooster or the fire sputtering out. It's the soft, rhythmic drumming of rain on the thatch above you. A steady, soaking rain. You already know what it means. The earth will turn to mud. The river will swell. And the laundry, even if washed, will never dry. You sigh not out of frustration, but from the quiet surrender of someone who knows she has no control over anything, not even the sky. You listen for a moment. The baby's breath is still gentle and even. Your daughter murmurs in her sleep, turning slightly under the rough blanket. You sit up slowly, your joints stiff, your back creaking. You pull on your skirt, still damp from yesterday, and wrap a shawl around your head. The thatch above has a small leak again. You watch the water bead along the edge of the roof, then drop with a soft pat into a bowl you set there days ago. You'll need to patch it, but not now. There are more urgent things. Rain means the fields will be impossible to work. Your husband will be restless. He'll find something to do, maybe help the reeve repair fences, or maybe sharpen tools. He doesn't like being idle. You understand. Idle hands in this world are dangerous. If you're not producing, you're vulnerable. If you're still, you're replaceable. You step outside and your feet immediately sink into cold, wet earth. The path is slick, and the pigs have trampled the ground to a brown slurry. You carry the slop bucket with both hands, careful not to spill it, as you make your way to the pen. The sow snorts, eyes you with suspicion, then digs in with hungry sounds. You stroke her muddy side briefly. She doesn't pull away. It's the most affection you'll give or receive this morning. You check the chickens next. One hen looks ill, listless, feathers ragged. If she dies, the loss will hurt. You make a mental note to gather nettle for her later, a kind of folk remedy passed down by your mother. She always swore it worked. Whether it did or not, you still believe it a little. Back inside, the fire has caught and is warming the room slowly. The smell of smoke is thick in the air. It clings to everything. Your hair, your clothes, the baby's swaddling. You've forgotten what it's like to smell clean. But clean is for feast days and funerals. You kneel to grind more grain for pottage. The motion is familiar stone against stone, a slow circular rhythm that numbs your arms. Your daughter watches you, her small face resting on her hands. Her eyes are clearer now, and she even smiles faintly when you glance up. It warms you more than the fire. She asks if she can help, so you guide her hands over yours, letting her feel the weight of the stone, the pull of labor. She giggles. For her, it's still a game. You pray it stays a game for just a little longer. When the meal is done, you ladle it into clay bowls and call the children to eat. The baby smacks her lips. Your eldest son eats quickly, barely chewing. You make sure everyone has some before you sit, taking what's left. It's thin and plain, but warm. That's enough. The rain doesn't let up, so the day becomes one of mending and tending. You sit by the fire and patch holes in the children's tunics. You replace a missing button with a carved piece of bone. Your son brings you a broken toy cart, and you fix the axle using a sliver of wood and a bit of twine. He grins when it rolls again. You ruffle his hair. Later, you take your daughter's hand and show her how to twist cord from hemp. Her fingers are small and clumsy, but she's determined. You praise her when she gets it, even if it's messy. Praise is rare in your world, but it blooms when offered. You remember the last time your mother praised you. You were sewing a cloth doll, and she said your stitches were fine enough to earn you a husband. You didn't understand what that meant then. Now you do. You open the shutters briefly to let out some of the smoke. The rain is steady, unchanging. You wonder how long it will last. The thatch is old, sagging in places. If it leaks too much, the bedding will get wet, and drying it will be impossible for days. You make a mental note to ask your husband to gather reeds for patching, if he remembers, if he isn't too tired. In the afternoon, the priest comes by. Not to visit, but to collect the tithe. You offer him half a loaf and a small pouch of dried herbs. He takes them without a word, barely nodding. You lower your eyes respectfully, though inside something aches. You've already given everything. But that's how it works. The church takes and you give. If you don't, you risk curses whispered behind hands. And in a world ruled by superstition, even whispers have weight. After he leaves, your husband returns. His boots are soaked, his cloak dripping. He doesn't say where he's been. He just sits near the fire and rubs his hands. You warm a bowl of broth for him and hand it over without comment. This is the rhythm. You don't need to speak, you just do. That night, as the children sleep, he asks if you've seen the stars lately. You glance at him, surprised. It's a strange thing to say. You shake your head. The clouds have kept them hidden for days. He nods slowly, eyes distant. You wonder what he's thinking about, maybe his brother who died during the last famine. Maybe his childhood, maybe nothing at all. You sit beside him in silence. The rain begins to soften. The drip from the thatch slows. You pull your shawl tighter and look down at your hands, cracked, calloused, stained with ash and soil. They are not the hands of a lady. They are not soft, not gentle, but they are strong. They've stitched clothes, lifted children, buried the dead, and held the living. They've worked every day of your life, and tomorrow they will work again, because that's what it means to be a peasant woman. You don't rest, you don't stop, you don't break, you bend, and still you rise. The clouds are gone by morning, but they've left their mark behind. The ground is soft and soggy underfoot, puddles reflecting the pale light of a gray-blue sky. It's the kind of day that fools you into thinking it might be pleasant, until the wind cuts through your clothes like a knife, and the mud sucks at your ankles with every step. You step outside to check on the animals, already bracing against the chill. The air smells fresh, almost sweet after the rain. But your back aches from a restless night, and your fingers are stiff before you even begin feeding the chickens. The sick hen is alive barely. She pecks weakly at the scraps you scatter, and you whisper a quiet encouragement under your breath. You've whispered that same thing to your daughter when her fever raged, to the cow, when she calved early, even to yourself sometimes just enough. Just hang on. Back inside, your husband is already gone. No word. Just the fading clomp of boots and a trail of damp prints by the door. He's gone to help clear a fallen tree or so, the reeve said the day before. You don't ask. If he brings home a sack of oats or even a few extra strips of salted meat, it will be enough. You stir the ashes in the hearth and add more kindling. The fire catches quickly, licking up the new wood. Warmth floods the room, slowly pushing back the damp. You reach for the bundle of dried herbs hanging from the rafters and crush a few between your fingers, marjoram maybe, or what passes for it. You add it to the pot. It won't mask the blandness, but it might remind your children of the spring fields for just a moment. Today is market day. You prepare for it carefully. You bundle what little you have to trade 2 spools of linen thread, a small pouch of dried lavender, and 3 waxed cloths you stitched from old scraps. You pack everything tightly into your basket and tie your cloak. Your daughter clutches your hand, eager to go. It's the only time she leaves the village. Market day is her glimpse at a world that doesn't begin and end at your doorstep. The path to market is muddy but familiar. Other women join the slow procession, each bearing baskets, some with little ones strapped to their backs. You exchange nods, soft greetings, the occasional smile. There's comfort in this slow, collective movement, a rhythm that has held for generations. The market itself is a patch of churned-up earth bordered by ramshackle stalls and carts. The smell of animals, sweat smoke, and sour milk hangs heavy in the air. You scan the crowd, eyes trained to find the honest traders, the rare soft faces among the hard ones. You trade your lavender for a handful of dried apples and a bit of lard. The cloths fetch a few turnips. The thread gets you a length of twine and a heel of hard cheese. It's not a feast, but it's more than you had yesterday. Your daughter stares at a booth selling ribbons, bright colors dyed with herbs and bark. She reaches toward a strip of blue with faint eyes. The merchant sees her and says nothing. You pull her hand back gently and smile apologetically. The man shrugs and turns away. You whisper to her that perhaps next time. You both know it's a lie. There is never a next time for things like ribbons. On your way back, you pass the well again. A group of boys are daring one another to climb the crumbling stone lip. You shout at them, but they scatter like birds. One falls and scrapes his arm. His mother will scold him, but she'll also be glad he's still laughing. Back home, the baby is awake and crying. Your son soothes her the best he can, bouncing her gently while stirring the pot with one hand. He's learned well. You trade the apples for silence sliced, and added to the stew, they soften into sweet relief. Your daughter still talks about the ribbons as she eats. You listen and nod. Her voice is light and hopeful, and you don't have the heart to dim it with practicality. Let her dream, even if it's only for a few years. After supper, the children play with sticks and scraps by the fire while you sit and rewrap your feet. The cloth you use for padding is thin and worn through. You'll need to find something else soon. Your boots are nearly gone. You flex your toes, wincing at the tenderness. But still you walk. Still you work. Your husband returns with a sack slung over his shoulder. It's half filled with barley and 2 withered carrots. He grunts something about the tree being heavier than it looked, then collapses on the bench. You offer him stew, which he eats in silence. Later, he helps you repair the stool that's been wobbling. He doesn't speak much, but sometimes his actions are softer than his voice allows. You accept that as affection. As the fire dims, you tell the children a story your mother used to tell you, about a clever fox and a poor girl who sewed her way out of a storm. Your daughter hangs on every word. Your son pretends not to listen, but you see his eyes flick toward you now and then. When the story ends, you sing them to sleep. It's a simple song, more hum than tune, the kind that soothes better than any blanket. You don't remember all the words. You make up the missing ones. They never notice. Later, as the house falls silent, you sit alone. You take out a small scrap of cloth, your secret project. You're stitching a doll for your daughter, pieced together from discarded bits. Her birthday is in a few weeks. She doesn't know it yet. No one celebrates birthdays in any grand way, but you remember hers. You always will. You finish the last row of stitches, then wrap the doll in linen and hide it away beneath the floorboard. A gift of love in a world where affection must be practical, quiet, and unseen. Tomorrow the bread must be baked again, the well cleaned, the hedge trimmed. The neighbor's children watched while she visits her ailing father. But tonight you sit just for a moment, watching the fire dance in orange ribbons across the walls. You have no ribbons, no jewels, no gold, but you have warmth, you have breath, and for tonight that is enough. The frost has returned. You knew it the moment you opened your eyes. The breath that left your mouth turned to mist. The cold has crept in like a silent thief, curling itself around your feet and fingers, and wrapping its arms around the thatched roof, the wooden walls, the hard-packed dirt floor. You draw your shawl tighter around your shoulders, but it does little. The fire must have died in the night. You can't remember hearing it crackle as you drifted off. The baby stirs beside you. She's bundled in layers, but still her little nose is like ice. You cup her cheeks with your palms, trying to pass your meager warmth into her. You can't see your breath in the air, but you feel the way the cold stiffens your limbs. You sit up slowly, joints creaking, and reach for the flint. Lighting a fire in the morning frost is an act of hope. It's hard when your fingers don't bend properly, when the wood is slightly damp, when the air bites harder than it breathes. but you coax the flame to life slowly, gently, like you're waking a sleeping child. A few orange sparks catch. You blow softly. The fire shudders, then flares. You sit back exhausted already. Your daughter wakes coughing a dry little rattle. You glance toward her, and her eyes meet yours. She tries to smile, but her lips are cracked. You fetch the last bit of rendered fat and smear it across her mouth, something to keep them from splitting open completely. You offer her a sip of water from the jug. She takes it, then leans back down. The fire's warmth slowly begins to creep into the corners of the room. Your husband is still asleep, snoring heavily. You rise without waking him. Let him rest. He'll be up soon enough, grumbling about the cold, grumbling about the weight of things that never change. You know his moods by now. You know when to speak and when to say nothing. Outside, the frost coats everything like the world has been dipped in powdered sugar and left to harden. The fields sparkle brittle and still. You check on the cow, her breath a ghost in the morning air. She's huddled in the corner of the barn, eyes wide but calm. The chickens cluck softly, not yet ready to leave their perches. The pig snorts as you arrive with scraps. She's shivering. You pat her side and whisper reassurances you don't believe. Frost means hunger. Frost means the stored food must last longer. Frost means no eggs, slower milk, and meat that thins out faster than you'd planned. You trudge back to the cottage, the path slippery beneath your worn shoes. Your feet are numb. You feel every rock and ridge through the thin soles. You've wrapped them in extra cloth, but it's already soaked through. Back inside, your husband is up. He's rubbing his hands together, grumbling as predicted. He curses the frost, curses the thatch, curses his boots. You offer him warm porridge without comment. He eats, says nothing more. Your children follow suit. Quiet. Eating quickly. You watch them carefully, measuring how much food you can offer. Just enough. Not too much. It must stretch. Must. After breakfast, you begin your daily tasks. The list never ends. Mend the hem of your son's cloak, scour the cooking pot with ash, twist new cord from last year's flax fibers. Your fingers are stiff. The cold has a way of turning every task into a small battle. But you win these battles. Every day. Quietly. Mid-morning, the knock comes. You don't expect visitors. No one visits without reason. You open the door to find the midwife. Her cheeks are red, her nose dripping. She's bundled tight, carrying a satchel over one shoulder. She's looking for a place to rest on her way to the next village where a woman is laboring with her sixth child. You invite her in immediately. She warms herself by the fire. You hand her broth thin as it is. She accepts it with a nod. You ask about the woman she's going to help. The midwife says little, just that the signs aren't good. The baby might be breech. The mother is weak. It will be a long night. You both fall silent. Then she asks about your daughter. You nod toward the girl still resting by the hearth. The midwife crosses the room and gently presses her hand to the child's brow. Her face is unreadable. Then she gives you a small smile and whispers, "She's stronger than most." You don't cry. Not now. You just nod and whisper your thanks. Before the midwife leaves, she hands you a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside is a small ball of beeswax and a few dried yarrow flowers. For the baby's skin, she says, for healing. You want to give her something in return, but you have nothing. So you just press her hand and tell her she'll be in your prayers. She smiles, and for a moment, she looks almost warm despite the weather. The day stretches forward. Your husband goes to help the village cooper. There's a new barrel to be made for salting meat. You tend the home. You keep the fire alive. You mend and stir and hum. You check on your daughter every hour, letting the beeswax melt between your fingers before applying it to her cheeks. Her skin is smoother already. She breathes easier. That evening, the sky clears entirely. A rarity. You step outside just before nightfall and look up. Stars. Not just a few, but hundreds, thousands. The Milky Way spills across the heavens like powdered light. You haven't seen it like this in months. Your daughter joins you bundled in a blanket, her eyes wide. She points at a particularly bright star. You tell her that one belongs to Saint Agnes. You don't know if that's true. You just want her to have something to believe in. She smiles. You smile too. Inside, the fire burns brightly. Your husband snores softly in the corner. Your sons are tangled together in sleep. The baby is curled like a bean, and for a little while the frost feels beautiful. Yes, it still means hunger. Yes, it still means hardship. But tonight, under this sky, you allow yourself to feel awe. You are a woman of the earth, of mud, of milk, of muscle and marrow. But also you are a woman of the sky, and both belong to you. The church bells ring in the distance, their hollow clang marking the feast day of Saint Hildegard, or maybe it's Saint Wulfric. You're never quite sure. The saints blur together in your memory like the seasons honored, named, but distant. Still, feast days matter even if you won't feast. You wake before the second bell, brushing the straw from your tunic and stretching your back until it cracks. Your body resents movement today. Your knuckles are swollen, and your knees feel like they belong to someone far older. You press your palms together and whisper a prayer more out of rhythm than faith. Then you move because moving is what keeps everything from collapsing. Today the church expects a contribution from each household. It's not about how much you give, but that you give. A token, an offering, something that proves you're still part of the fold. Your husband has already left to help dig the new grave plots behind the chapel. They say someone from the next village brought the pox. The priest denies it, but everyone whispers. You prepare a small jar of sour curds and a cloth-wrapped bundle of dried nettles. It's all you have. You tuck them into your basket and wrap your shawl tight. Your daughter walks with you, her hand warm in yours. The air is crisp again, the frost gone, but the wind still biting. You both keep your heads down as you follow the procession of villagers toward the church, weaving along the muddy track through the center of town. The church is the largest building you know, stone and timber, solid and cold, rising out of the land like a warning. Inside it smells of wax dust and damp wood. The icons stare down from the walls, their eyes faded but stern. You make your way to the side altar and place your offerings down gently, avoiding the gaze of the Reeve's wife, who brings a small wheel of cheese smug in her abundance. Your daughter stares up at the candles flickering on the altar. You whisper to her that every flame is a soul being remembered. She nods solemnly, then squeezes your hand. You squeeze back. The priest delivers the sermon in Latin. You understand none of it, but you bow your head when the others do kneel when expected, and mouth the amen with everyone else. It's not about knowing the words. It's about staying inside the lines. After the Mass, there's talk of the manor steward hosting a meal for the workers. Your husband might be chosen to help serve it, would mean extra bread, maybe even meat. You listen from a distance as the names are read aloud. His is not among them. You watch his jaw tighten, but he says nothing, just turns and walks back toward the field. You follow with your daughter, keeping your pace slow. Back at home, the fire has burned low. You feed it carefully, coaxing it back to life. Then you remove the small loaf of oat bread you saved from market day. You tear it into portions, placing a piece in each child's hand before you take your own. Your daughter whispers, "This is for the saint," and lifts her piece slightly before eating. You nod, saying nothing, a warmth blooming in your chest that has nothing to do with fire. You spend the rest of the day preparing the little patch of ground near the back door for early planting. The frost has lifted for now, and if the weather holds, you might get beans in before the next hard rain. You scrape the soil with a broken-handled hoe, your muscles protesting every movement. Your daughter helps you scatter ash into the rows to enrich the dirt, though she ends up with more on her face than in the soil. You laugh, an actual audible laugh, and she gasps in surprise before laughing too. The boys return from gathering reeds by the river. They've bundled them into thick armloads, proud of their work. You thank them, brushing mud from their foreheads, and begin laying the reeds aside to dry. They'll be used to patch the roof, reinforce the henhouse, maybe even make mats if there's enough. Later, a neighbor stops by Ida, whose husband recently lost his thumb to a scythe. She needs help preparing a compress and asks if you have any cloth to spare. You don't, not really, but you give her half of your clean rags anyway. She weeps with gratitude. You don't tell her you'll go without bandages yourself now. It doesn't matter. She needs it more. That evening you hear music, faint, distant, coming from the manor. The steward's feast has begun. You imagine the candles flickering on polished plates, the bread stacked high, the scent of roasted lamb in the air. You can almost feel it in your nostrils. But it's not for you. Not today. Not ever. Instead, you boil a soup of nettles and carrots, thicken it with barley, and add one of the eggs the hens finally laid this morning. It's more than usual. The children are quiet as they eat. Your husband arrives late, silent eyes, tired. You place a bowl in front of him. He nods once. It's the only thank you you'll hear. Later, after the children sleep, your husband sits near the fire, sharpening a blade. You sit beside him, hands busy with stitching. Neither of you speak. The fire crackles. Outside, the wind moans low, like it's searching for someone who no longer lives here. You think of the saints, not the ones in the painted glass, but the real ones, women like you, who worked and bled and broke without recognition. You wonder if heaven remembers them, if God knows how many mouths they fed, how many tears they hid, how many lives they stitched together without ever being seen. You hope so. You close your eyes for a moment and whisper the name of a friend you lost last year in childbirth. Then you whisper your own name quietly, just to hear it, just to remember it's yours. You are still here, still working, still breathing. And that too is something sacred. The air smells of smoke and thaw. It's not quite spring, not yet, but something in the morning wind whispers of change. You feel it in your bones before you see it. The ground is no longer hard underfoot. The puddles have shrunk. The frost, while still clinging to the edges of things, no longer bites as sharply. You step outside and see the tiniest green sprigs pushing up near the edge of the path. It's nothing. But it's everything. You return inside quickly, cheeks flushed from the wind, and stir the fire. You've learned to do it gently, like coaxing a baby to wake. You blow softly on the embers and feed them, kindling a little at a time, building a slow and steady heat that fills the space. The cottage feels less like a coffin and more like a home when the fire is strong. You cherish that. The children stir. The baby wakes with a soft cry, and you scoop her into your arms before she fully cries out. She's grown stronger. You can feel it in her weight, in the sturdiness of her grip around your shawl. Your daughter rises soon after, hair, tangled eyes bright with sleep. You wrap her in a blanket and sit her near the hearth. Your sons sleep a little longer. Boys always do, but they'll be up soon to help carry water from the well. Your husband is already gone. He left before light, muttering something about fence posts and stolen sheep. You don't expect him back until sundown. You're used to his early exits. It's easier in many ways. Less to navigate, less to dodge. Today is washing day again. You bundle the dirty linens, soiled shifts, and ragged underclothes into a heavy cloth sack and hoist it onto your back. Your daughter offers to help, and you hand her a smaller bundle to carry. Together you walk the muddy path toward the river skirts lifted above your ankles. You pass other women doing the same, some already returning with dripping loads, others joining the slow procession toward the water. The river is swollen from meltwater rushing faster than usual. You find your usual spot among the rocks and kneel, spreading the linens out around you. The cold water shocks your hands, but you don't flinch. You've done this too many times. Your fingers move with practiced efficiency, soak, scrub, beat, rinse, wring, over and over. Beside you, your daughter struggles with a smaller cloth. You gently correct her grip, showing her how to beat it against the flat stone. She smiles when the water splashes back at her. You don't scold her. Let her find joy where she can. The world will take it from her soon enough. You listen to the other women as you work. Gossip and warnings mix with jokes and songs. One says the Reeves' youngest was caught stealing honey. Another says the Lord's wife is pregnant again, her third this year, and none have survived. Someone mutters that she's cursed. No one argues. The line between blessed and cursed is so thin it might as well be invisible. You pause briefly to rub your aching wrists, then carry on. A hawk circles high overhead. A fox darts along the tree line, barely visible. The world goes on around you, wild, ancient, uncaring, and you keep washing. Once the last piece is clean and wrung out, you bundle the wet clothes into your sack. It's heavier now, and your shoulders groan beneath its weight. Your daughter offers to carry the smallest bundle again. You thank her, ruffling her hair. Back home, you string up a new line behind the cottage and begin hanging the laundry, the wind tugging at the damp cloth like an impatient child. The sun peeks through the clouds, and you say a silent prayer. It stays out long enough to dry everything. You hang each piece with care, watching them flap like pale flags in the wind. Inside, you boil water for tea. Not real tea, but crushed leaves and dried herbs steeped until the water darkens and gives off a faint bitterness. It warms your belly and makes the hunger easier to ignore. You share it with the children, passing the clay cup from hand to hand. The rest of the day is spent mending. You sit by the fire with a basket of torn clothing at your feet, needle in hand. Your daughter sits beside you, practicing her stitches on an old rag. She's getting better. Her fingers are more precise now. You praise her work gently, and her face lights up. You try not to think about how soon those hands will become a mother's hands, or a widow's, or both. Your sons return from the well with full buckets water sloshing over the sides. You scold them lightly for the mess, but your voice is warm. They grin sheepishly and set the buckets down. The water will be used for cooking, for washing faces, for dampening the floor before sweeping. Every drop matters. That evening, your husband returns with a handful of fish. Caught in a snare he laid near the brook, he says. They're small and bony, but it's a windfall. You clean them with your daughter's help, scaling and gutting them as the pot heats over the fire. You add the fish to the broth, watching the oil rise to the surface in shimmering waves. Tonight will be a good meal. As everyone eats, your daughter tells a story. She made up a tale of a princess who sews her way out of a tower, one stitch at a time. The others listen, even your husband. You don't say a word. You just watch her eyes sparkle and feel your own heart swell. After dinner, the children drift to sleep one by one, curled together in the warmth of the hearth. Your husband sharpens a blade in silence. You finish one more row of stitches on a tunic's torn sleeve. Outside, the wind is softer tonight, gentler. You step out for a moment before bed, looking up at the sky. A few stars peek through the clouds. You think of your mother, your grandmother. All the women who walked this same life carried the same burdens and kept their homes warm with nothing but grit and love. You whisper a thank you into the darkness, not because someone is listening, but because it feels right. Then you go back inside, pull the blankets over your sleeping children, and settle beside them. Another day behind you, another waiting ahead, and you will rise to meet it as you always do, quietly, powerfully, completely. You wake to the sound of birdsong, a rarity. For weeks now, the mornings have been filled with only wind, frost, and silence. But today the chirping cuts through the gray, delicate and defiant. You lie still for a moment, letting it settle in your chest like a blessing. Spring is coming. Not here yet, not fully, but near. You can feel it in the light. The cottage is still save for the rhythmic breathing of the children. You slide out from beneath the blankets, your body aching, but somehow lighter than usual. You whisper a quiet greeting to the day as you move about, pulling on your shift, tying your hair, coaxing the fire back to life with the last of the kindling from the stack. There's no kindling to spare now. You'll have to gather more today, even if it means walking farther into the woods than usual. Your daughter stirs beside the hearth, rubbing her eyes. Her cheeks are no longer pale. Her cough has faded to a soft sniffle. She smiles when she sees you and crawls into your lap. You wrap your shawl around both of you, letting her press her cheek to your chest. Her heartbeat is strong. The warmth of her little body seeps into yours. You rise soon after and begin the morning's work. The pottage must be reheated, the floor swept, the animals fed. You move through the tasks like a slow dance, your hands knowing what to do even before your mind catches up. The rhythm of life is so deeply ingrained in your body now that it feels like muscle memory ingrained over years, passed down silently by generations of women before you. Your husband returns briefly with news. The steward wants the fence repaired along the southern border. He'll be gone all day, and he might not come home until well after dark. You nod, handing him a piece of bread for the road. He takes it with a grunt and leaves. With the older boys out gathering wood, and your husband at the far field, the house falls quiet. You use the time to tend to things that always wait, things that never seem urgent, but are always essential. You scrub the walls, removing the smoke stains that have been creeping higher over the winter. You patch a hole in the baby's blanket. You rearrange the dried herbs, cutting down the oldest ones and laying new bundles to dry. You prepare a poultice from ground comfrey root and tallow. Your neighbor's husband has a wound that won't heal, and though no one asked, you know what to do. It's not just labor, it's knowledge. Deep knowledge. Not written down, not spoken in books, passed from mouth to ear, from hand to hand. The kind of wisdom that never makes it into history, scrolls but keeps entire villages alive. By mid-morning, your daughter asks to visit the pasture. You wrap her tightly, sling the baby across your back, and take her hand. Together, you walk the ridge behind the cottage, boots sinking into soft soil. The ground is waking. There are tiny green shoots pushing through the earth. Snowdrops dot the edge of the path like small defiant stars. She picks one and tucks it into your hair. You don't protest. You reach the pasture where the other women have gathered. Some are carding wool, others washing clothes in large tubs. You settle among them, pulling out your spindle. Your daughter skips ahead to play with the other children, laughing, chasing a hoop made of bent wood. The women around you talk as they work, not gossip today, but memories. One speaks of a sister lost in childbirth, another of the first time her son walked. You contribute little, but you listen deeply. This too is sacred. The slow weaving of shared memory and grief and survival. You spin your wool and let their stories settle into your bones. Someone asks if the midwife has returned from the next village. You say yes, she passed by 2 nights ago, tired and dirty, but alive. The child was born healthy, but the mother bled badly. She's healing slowly. A few women cross themselves. May that be us when the time comes, one of them murmurs. No one answers. In the afternoon, you return home and begin preparing supper. You mix the last of your flour with a little water and lard, forming it into small cakes that sizzle when laid on the griddle. The baby wakes hungry. You nurse her as you cook, one arm holding her close while the other flips the cakes with a wooden stick. This is your gift, doing everything at once. One body, 4 tasks, a dozen thoughts. Your boys return proud of their bundle of sticks. They've scraped their arms, climbing through brush, but carry their loads like trophies. You praise them, press cool cloths to their scratches, and remind them to leave the wood high so it dries faster. They nod solemnly. You watch them heart-sore with love. They are growing too fast. They already look more like men than children. That evening you make stew with the marrow bones traded last week. The broth is thick and rich, fragrant with onion and garlic greens. You watch your children eat, watch them lick their fingers, scrape their bowls. It fills you with something you can't name. Your husband returns late. Mud streaks his cloak and a gash darkens his sleeve. You fetch water and clean it quietly, packing the wound with the comfrey salve you made earlier. He winces, but says nothing. He falls asleep before the fire, a half-eaten heel of bread still in his hand. After the children are in bed, you sit quietly. You take out the little doll you've been stitching, hidden away unfinished. You sew on the last patch with slow, careful movements. Your fingers ache, but you want it to be perfect. Your daughter will wake tomorrow to find it lying beside her. You can already see her eyes widen with joy. Just the thought of it keeps you from crying. Outside, the stars are bright again. Inside, the cottage glows with firelight and quiet breath. Tomorrow will come with more aches, more tasks, more uncertainty. But tonight, your family is fed. The roof is holding. Your daughter will smile. And you will endure just as you always have. Not just because you must, but because it is who you are. A storm is coming. You smell it before you see it, before the wind stiffens and the sky darkens, before the chickens grow restless and the trees begin to sway. The air tastes of iron and smoke, thick and heavy. You feel it in your knees, in the way your skin tightens with electricity, in the silence that falls over the land like a blanket. You've lived through enough seasons to recognize nature's warnings. And you know what storms can take. You're already moving. You call to your boys, telling them to bring in the last of the firewood. You double-check the cow's tether, reinforce the pig pen with more stones. You gather the drying laundry and take down the reed mats strung behind the cottage. You check the roof for loose thatch, tugging on the twine that holds the patched bundles together. You work quickly, methodically. You've learned not to wait when the winds start whispering. Your daughter trails behind you, asking questions about the sky, about whether the saints can stop the storm. You tell her they might, that maybe Saint Medarda's protector against bad weather is watching. She nods, wide-eyed, clinging to your skirt, as you lift a chicken back into its coop. You don't tell her that the saints are silent most days, but sometimes the lies we tell children are the prayers we wish were true. By afternoon, the sky is a solid sheet of gray. The wind has picked up, snapping at the corners of the roof, moaning low through the trees like a warning. You herd the children inside and seal the door with a plank. The fire is strong. You feed it 2 extra logs, watching as the room fills with warmth and flickering shadows. Inside, you prepare a storm meal. Not a feast, never a feast, but something that will hold their bellies, something warm enough to outlast the sound of rain on the roof and the creak of the beams. You boil barley thick and slow, adding the last of the carrot tops, the bones from last night's stew, and a few precious dried peas. Your daughter sets the table with mismatched wooden bowls. Your son carries in fresh water from the well, sloshing it slightly in his haste. You say nothing. The storm is close. The first strike of thunder is distant, but deep like the roar of something ancient. Your children flinch. Even the baby startles in her swaddle. You calm them with stories, old ones passed down from your grandmother. Tales of angels who ride on storm clouds, of good women whose prayers parted the rain, of animals who speak during lightning flashes. You tell them in a low, slow voice, rhythm like a lullaby. They lean in close. You can feel their bodies pressed against yours, warm and trembling. The rain begins. First a few drops, then a wall of water. It hammers the roof, seeps through the cracks in the shutters, patters against the stones outside. The wind whistles through the gaps in the doorframe. Your husband paces once, then sits with a sigh. He sharpens his blade without speaking, eyes fixed on the flames. He doesn't like storms. They remind him of the year the flood came, of the cousin he lost to drowning. He doesn't say this, but you know. You hold the baby against your chest and rock gently back and forth, listening to the water and wind and thunder. You hum, letting the sound cut through the fear. The stew bubbles. The fire dances. And outside the world roars. The storm lasts well into the night. At one point, the wind rips a piece of thatch from the edge of the roof. Rain drips steadily onto the hearthstone. You move quickly, setting a bucket beneath it and packing the breach with old cloths. Your hands move without thought. You've done this before. No one sleeps easily. The children drift in and out, jerking awake with every crack of thunder. You lie with them, pulling them close, sharing body heat and whispered reassurances. You tell them this storm will pass, that the roof will hold, that God sees them. You don't know if you believe it, but you say it anyway. By dawn, the wind begins to die. The rain slows to a patter, then a drip, then silence. The fire has burned low, but the room is still warm. You step outside, carefully blinking against the pale light. The land is soaked. The path is a river of mud. A tree has fallen across the lane, and one of the chicken coops has toppled sideways. But the animals are alive. The roof is mostly whole, and your family is safe. You return inside soaked but grateful. Your husband is already righting the coop, grumbling softly. The boys are pulling branches from the path. Your daughter holds the baby, gently rocking her as you pour fresh water into the pot. The first task of the day, like every day, is to begin again. You hang the wet cloths by the hearth. You kneel by the hearth to stoke the fire. You scoop the cold remains of the barley stew and reheat it for breakfast. You pass the bowls to waiting hands, each child quiet, with the kind of tired that only storms bring. The sky outside is pale and open. No sun yet, but promise. Later you'll repair the roof. You'll gather the sticks. You'll check the field for flooding. But for now you sit for just a minute, feet aching, arms heavy, holding your daughter close. She asks if the saints heard you last night. You pause, then nod. They heard us, you whisper, and they stayed with us until morning. She smiles and leans her head against your shoulder. The storm is over, and you are still standing. The days after a storm are the ones that test you most, not because of what's gone, but because of what remains. The sky may be clear, but the ground is slick and heavy. The thatch still drips in places. The chickens are skittish, and the cow won't settle. Everything feels off, bent, like the world held its breath during the storm and forgot how to breathe when it passed. You wake with the weight of that silence pressing down on you. Your husband has already gone out to mend the damage. The boys follow him, dragging branches from the lane, their boots squelching in the saturated earth. You stay behind with the baby and your daughter, who still looks tired from the night of thunder. You boil water and add what remains of the barley, a thin, soupy breakfast to warm the belly. You chew slowly, mind already moving through the day's list. So much to do. You step outside to assess the roof again. The patch you made in the night held mostly, but the corner above the sleeping mat is sagging. If it rains again, it'll pour straight onto the children. You'll need new reeds to reinforce it, but your store is nearly gone. You'll have to go to the riverbanks today. That means walking farther than usual, maybe asking the boys to help carry it back before the light fades. Another task added to the mountain of others. Still, you work. You kneel to scrub the stones near the hearth, where the dripping soaked the floor and turned ash to sludge. You lift and shake out each blanket. You hang them near the fire to dry. You sweep the soot mend, a tear in your daughter's tunic, slice dried roots to boil for tea. Everything is needed. Everything has purpose. Your hands never stop. The village is quieter than usual. Everyone is tending to their own wreckage. You pass Margaret as she drags her pig pen back into place. She's cursing under her breath, shoulders hunched, skirts stained with mud. You offer to help, and together you lift the broken gate into place and brace it with heavy stones. She grunts her thanks, and you exchange the kind of glance only women like you can give, equal parts pain, weariness, and grit. You set off to the river with your daughter in the early afternoon. The walk is long, the path soft and treacherous in places, but you know every bend, every root that sticks up just enough to catch a careless toe. You hold your daughter's hand tightly, steadying her as she slips. The woods smell different after rain, sweet and earthy, full of rot and life. You breathe it in deeply. At the river, the current runs high. You work carefully, your skirts tucked above your knees, feet planted wide as you pull reeds from the bank one by one. Your daughter collects them behind you, bundling them into tight sheaves. The sun slips behind the trees slowly, and the shadows begin to lengthen. You finish with enough to patch the roof and maybe a little extra for weaving a new mat. It's never enough, but it's more than nothing. On the walk home, your daughter asks about your own mother. You don't talk about her often. You tell her small things, the way her hair smelled like lavender, how she used to sing while grinding grain, how she once patched your shift with a piece of fabric so soft you kept touching it for days. Your daughter listens quietly, then asks if she was kind. You pause, then nod. She was tired, you say. But yes, she was kind. Back at the cottage, you light the fire and begin patching the thatch while the boys boil water and tend to the animals. Your husband returns just as the stars begin to appear, carrying 2 fish he caught by the flooded stream. One is already gutted. The other he lays beside the hearth with a tired shrug. He says little, just eats, just watches the flames. The stew tonight is better than usual, thicker, richer. You add garlic, greens, and a few mushrooms your daughter found near the tree roots. You season it with the last of your salt. The children eat eagerly. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth. Later, when the little ones are asleep, you return to the door and sit just outside. The sky is clear again. So many stars. You remember standing here years ago before your first child, belly swollen, wondering what kind of world you were bringing them into. You still wonder that. But they are here. And you are still here. Your husband comes to the doorway and sits beside you. For a while you both say nothing. Just watch the stars. Then he says, "The river will flood again before spring's out." You nod. It always does. Will we be ready? You don't answer right away. Then we always are. It's not a boast. It's not even confidence. It's simply the truth. Readiness for you isn't a choice. It's a condition of existence. You prepare, you endure, you rebuild. Over and over again. He nods, stands, leaves you there beneath the sky. And you stay. Because the day is done. Because tomorrow is waiting. Because you are the one who makes sure the roof doesn't fall. The fire doesn't die. The story doesn't end. The first true day of spring arrives without announcement. No feast, no procession, no great chorus of birds. Just the sun, soft and steady, stretching longer over the horizon than it has in months. You wake before it rises, as always, but when the light spills into the cottage, it is golden instead of gray. It paints the walls in warmth, and for a moment, you sit still, letting it touch your face. The baby stirs in your arms. She's grown heavier, healthier. You run your fingers along her cheek, and she grabs one instinctively, pulling it toward her mouth. You smile. Your daughter, curled beside the hearth, is still asleep, her lips parted slightly, breath deep and even. The boys snore from their straw mat, one with a foot sticking out from beneath the blanket. This is what peace looks like, you think, not the absence of hardship, but the rare quiet between storms. You move quietly through the morning, your body more eager than usual. The chill is still there, but it's softer now, less cruel. You stoke the fire and hang the kettle. You grind barley into meal, humming softly, the sound rising with the steam. Today is cleaning day, not the daily tidy, but the full scrub ritual that comes with the new season. The winter soot must go. The mats must be shaken. The corners scoured. Your daughter wakes with a yawn and rubs her eyes with the backs of her hands. You tell her it's time for the spring wash. She groans dramatically, and you laugh. It's a rare sound from your own mouth, and it surprises both of you. She giggles in return and pulls her shift over her head before dashing outside toward the basin. The sun warms the side of the house, and you haul out the rugs, beating them with a stick until the dust rises like smoke. You scrub the walls with vinegar water, wipe the windows, sweep the hearthstone until it gleams. The boys return from the woods with fresh rushes for the floor. You scatter them with the practiced hand. The smell of green crushed plant and clean air fills the room. Later in the morning, your neighbor drops by with a bundle of wild herbs. She's older, with lines around her eyes like threads pulled tight. She sits beside you near the fire, both of you shelling peas and soaking your cracked heels in the same warm basin. You talk the way women do when there's no need to impress, slowly, truthfully, with silences that comfort more than words. She tells you her eldest is leaving soon to train with a carpenter in a nearby village. You congratulate her even as a strange ache opens in your chest. You think of your own children, still young, but racing toward the edge of childhood. You know what comes next. The boys will be sent to the field. The girl will be matched. It is the way of things. But today they are still yours. In the afternoon, you gather the children and head toward the meadow. The earth is still soft beneath your boots, but grass has begun to grow in earnest. You spot early violets along the edge, tiny bursts of purple against the mud. Your daughter gathers a few in her apron, tucking one behind your ear as you kneel to tie the baby's swaddle. The boys race ahead with sticks pretending to be knights. You watch them from a distance, their shouts echoing in the open air. There's a lightness in them today, a freedom the cold months had buried. You let it bloom. You don't call them back. You just watch. You sit in the grass and peel an apple you bartered for at market. It's soft and bruised but still sweet. You divide it into thin slices and pass them around. Your daughter chews slowly, eyes closed, and the baby mashes her piece into her mouth with both fists. You laugh again. Later, you walk back home under a sky the color of fresh linen. The air smells of damp earth and something almost hopeful. You know there are still hard days ahead. The spring can bring floods, fever rot. But today is not one of those days. Today is a day of ease. At home, you light the fire, though you don't need it quite as badly. Supper is leftover stew warmed with herbs and served with thick slices of oat bread. The boys fall asleep before the bowls are empty. Your husband returns with the scent of hay on his clothes and a rare smile on his face. He kisses the top of your head without a word. It's the first time he's done that in weeks. After the children are asleep, you take a moment for yourself. You sit at the threshold, legs crossed, your shawl wrapped around your shoulders. You watch the stars blink into being, one by one, patient and sure. Somewhere far away, a wolf howls faintly, a reminder that danger still lingers, that it always will. But tonight it is far. Tonight, you've cleaned the soot from the walls. Your daughter laughed. Your baby smiled. Your hands didn't bleed. The roof held. The stew was enough. And you are alive. You whisper thanks, not to the saints, not to the wind, not even to God, but to yourself, quiet and sure, for surviving, for stitching together a life from the threads no one sees, for turning cold mornings into warm nights one day at a time. You rise before dawn again, but the darkness doesn't feel quite as heavy. The earth is stirring. The wind still carries a chill, but it doesn't bite. It brushes your skin like a memory of winter, not its presence. There is a softness in the light that spills through the cracks in the door, a gentler hue that turns the dust in the air golden. You sit up slowly, your shawl slipping from your shoulders, and listen to the breathing of your sleeping children, to the fire settling in the hearth, to the faint sound of roosters far down the lane. The baby is curled tightly in her swaddled cheeks, rosy and round. Your daughter is buried beneath a tangle of blankets, one hand curled around the cloth doll you stitched in secret and left for her 2 nights ago. She hasn't let it go since. When she sleeps, she pulls it close, and when she wakes, she talks to it in whispers, telling it the stories you used to invent when she was ill. You stoke the fire not because it's cold, but because the routine comforts you. The way your body knows the motions without thinking. The way the flames respond a soft orange glow pushing back the shadows. Today is planting day. The season has finally turned. The soil is ready. You dress quickly, tying your apron over your shift and braiding your hair back out of your face. Your boys are already awake when you step outside. They're standing barefoot in the dew-wet grass, rubbing their eyes, looking out over the fields as though seeing them for the first time. You smile and call to them. They smile back. Your husband loads the tools onto the cart. He doesn't say much, but he moves with purpose. The way he handles the spade, the way he sharpens the plow blade, these are the quiet signs of readiness. This is his season too. The ground has always answered him in a way words never could. You pack a small meal onion flatbread, a few slices of hard cheese, a cloth-wrapped lump of dried fruit you've been saving. The baby you strap to your back. Your daughter helps carry the seed sack, holding it like treasure. You head to the field together as the sun breaks over the trees, spilling light across the furrows. The land is damp but eager. The boys dig the rows while your husband turns the earth with slow, practiced force. You and your daughter move together, dropping seeds into the soil, pressing them down with careful fingers. Lentils, peas, barley. Each one a gamble. Each one a promise. You whisper over the seeds as you plant them, not prayers exactly, but hopes. Let this one grow tall. Let this one feed my daughter through winter. Let this one survive the frost. You don't speak them aloud, but you feel them. You always do. Around midday, you stop to eat. The sun is warm now, and your back aches from bending, but you feel good. Satisfied. The food tastes better when eaten in the open dirt under your nails, sweat on your brow. Your daughter lies on her stomach, chewing slowly, her feet kicking behind her. The baby naps in the shade of the cart. Your husband closes his eyes for a moment, his face tilted toward the sky. You take it all in this rare moment. No one is crying. No one is ill. The roof didn't leak last night. The stew stretched far enough. Your hands are cracked, your knees bruised, but your children are fed and the soil is warm. This is not joy as the world defines it. It is not ease or comfort or beauty. But it is joy in your language, the language of survival, of planting, of quiet victories. You finish the afternoon in rhythm, seed after seed, row after row. The sun sinks low and your body grows heavy, but you keep going. You do not stop until the last row is planted, until your fingers are stained and sore, until your daughter leans into your side, half asleep on her feet. When you return home, the cottage smells of smoke and herbs. You light the fire once more, though the air is already soft. You hang your cloak to dry and gently lower the baby onto the mat. The boys sit quietly, too tired to move. Your daughter lies on the floor with her doll clutched to her chest. Your husband brings in a bundle of fresh rushes and lays them near the hearth. He says nothing, but the way he stands beside you tells you everything. You've made it through the winter, together. You sit by the fire with your children around you, the last light of day slipping through the window. This is your legacy, not written in books or carved in stone, but in hands held in seeds planted in stories told and retold under smoky rafters. You are not a queen. No one writes songs about you. No one paints your portrait. But you have built something greater than stone walls or golden crowns. You have built continuity. You have built tomorrow. You are not the lady of the manor. You are not the saint in the chapel glass. But your work is holy, your love enduring, your presence unshakable. You are the soil, the thread, the fire. And because of you, this world still spins. You can rest now. Let the fire flicker low in your imagination, casting golden light across the floorboards of that small medieval cottage. Let the weight slide from your shoulders, the aches and bruises, the hunger and worry. It's night again. The children are asleep. The chores are done. You've spent your day not in glory or splendor, but in endurance, in persistence, in quiet labor that no one will praise but which held entire generations together. You've walked miles without leaving the village. You've planted hope in the cold spring soil. You've carried more than baskets and babies. You've carried the rhythm of a world that was never designed with you in mind, but which could not survive without you. And now you are here at the end of the day, in that still sacred moment between the last chore and the first dream. You are not alone. There were thousands like you, millions, women whose names were never recorded, who never learned to read or write, but who kept the world spinning in their palms. This story was for them, but it was also for you. So let your breath slow now. Let the images fade, the reed mats, the threadbare shawl, the flicker of candlelight on stone walls. Let your muscles relax and your heartbeat soften. There is nothing more to carry. The night is here, and you made it.